Have you ever felt all zen and in a really grounded, lovable, loving place, and then you spend time with your family, and within minutes you feel all that calmness totally slipping away? There's a great quote from Ram Dass: if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. This week's video, once again, we're going deep and down and dirty for you to cover boundaries. We're talking about toxic family members. Hi, my name is Teresa Byrne. I am a 4th degree black belt master instructor in boundaries, self-defense, martial arts. And my mission is really to help people learn how to set emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, all the boundaries in their relationships. And this is Sandy.
Hi, I'm Sandy Weiner, and I am the dating and love coach for single women over 40 and the host of Last First Date Radio. And my mission is to help women value themselves more and set clear boundaries, especially with men, so that they have healthier, happier relationships. And Teresa and I are also the co-creators of the upcoming course called Boundaries for Beautiful Relationships. And this week, we are talking about a really important topic about setting boundaries with toxic family members. Anybody out there have a toxic family member?
They won't know if you raise your hand.
Right, exactly. So why are we talking about this today? Because we can't choose our families, but we can choose how we are with them. We can choose how to set boundaries with them to protect ourselves from the emotional pain that can come when a family member steps on our boundaries, makes us feel really bad. And most of my coaching clients learned unhealthy patterns in dating from their toxic family members. And that's the first thing that we always talk about when we begin coaching together. Because when you can identify the origins of your unhealthy relationship patterns that begin back in our family of origin, we can begin to change them and stop repeating what we've been taught at home.
And it's really important to be able to understand what those patterns are. And Sandy does a wonderful job of that. So what is toxic? It's kind of a catchphrase lately, right? You hear people like, she's toxic, he's toxic, that's toxic. Well, toxic is really, the way that I define it is, it's something that is a poison to you. So for example, certain mushrooms might not be poisonous to someone else, but they're poisonous to you. And so what a toxic person is, or what toxicity is their energy, because we each have our own energy circles. I've got my energy, you've got your energy. When we intersect, it can bring out the worst in me, or it can just make me feel like I've been poisoned, or it just feels bad or harmful. And usually toxic isn't that another person is toxic. They're like, all mushrooms aren't toxic, but that other person is toxic to you. Their behavior, their actions, the way that they are just doesn't work for you. And you end up feeling awful. The other point about being toxic or toxicity is that it's not something that people do on purpose. For example, your family members may just be being themselves, and that energy just makes you feel awful, but they don't realize they're being toxic.
What are some common toxic family situations? One of my clients has a brother who is very self-centered. He only thinks about himself, but their mother thinks he walks on water, like he can do no wrong. And it really pisses off my client. And as the mom is aging, this brother has not been there for any of the important stuff, for any of the sicknesses, the hospitalizations. That's where the daughter always steps in. But when it comes to money, he wants it all. He wants to inherit the mom's estate. He wants to take stuff even before she dies. And my client is concerned that he's going to not only take her money when she passes, but he's also going to sabotage her financial situation right now while she's still alive. And this is a really difficult situation for her to navigate. It's made her really anxious and really angry. And so we've worked together to teach her how to calm herself and how to deal with this and how to set boundaries. And one of the reasons that it's so easy for me to coach clients who have toxic family members is that I have my own toxic family members, and I have worked through them, so I am better at helping them with theirs.
Such a great piece of experience when you can work through your own stuff. So how does it feel in your body? How does toxicity or someone who's toxic feel to you? Typically, it would feel like you ate or drank something poisonous. You might have an upset stomach. You might feel anxious. You might feel nervous. You also could feel, after an interaction with them, a phone call with them, you might feel drained, or you might just feel as if you had just been, I don't know, slimed isn't the right word, but just like you had been covered with some kind of toxic gas. You've been around a toxic gas and you just feel sick. So oftentimes toxicity can feel like you've actually swallowed or been around something poisonous.
Well, why is it harder for us to deal with our family members than other people who might be toxic to us in our lives? And it's really because with people who are toxic to us, who are friends or romantic partners, we can set a boundary, we can walk away, we can just leave them forever. But with family, it's not so easy to just leave. I mean, they're part of our lives. In some extreme cases, people do divorce their family members. Children will go to court and not be around their father or their mother anymore if they're too toxic to them. But most of us still see family members during holidays, during celebrations, during funerals. And if we don't deal with these family issues in a healthy way, they will take their toll on us.
One of the most important ways that you can stop people or family members from draining you or making you feel awful or overwhelmed is by learning how to draw boundaries. Now, want to cover some of the ways that they cross boundaries so you're aware of how it can happen and how it can look. Sometimes family members can be full of unsolicited advice. And if you haven't seen our video on unsolicited advice, there's a plug for it. But they'll be always telling you or judging you or criticizing you. You should do it this way. Basically, you're not doing it right or you're not doing it well. And so you end up just feeling less than. And you're thinking in your head, these are people who are supposed to love me, but man, they don't even really get me. They don't support me. The other thing that can happen boundary-wise with families is they can feel entitled. So it's almost like that feeling of, well, you have to listen to me because I am related to you. And even though you don't want to listen to them or you don't want to take their advice, you've seen how things worked out for them. You don't want that for your life. But there's a feeling of entitlement that when someone in a family comments on our lives, we're supposed to listen and we're supposed to do something about it. Like they're entitled to all their opinions about how we live our lives. I'm always like, you know what? Take care of your own stuff. Family members also worry about you. And this is a boundary because when worry comes across energetically, it feels like fear, and it feels in this almost like a debilitating way. And it took me a really long time to realize that what we do when we love people is we worry about them. So if you're a parent, you worry about your kids. It doesn't mean that you don't trust them, and it doesn't mean you don't believe they're fabulous, but you still have that worry. And part of your job as a parent or a friend or whatever in families is to contain that worry so that you're not like sharing your worries with them all of the time. I got that one a lot from my family. So I've learned how to deal with that one. Another thing families can do is they can underestimate you. They don't think that you can live up to the potential. Oftentimes they've seen you at your worst. And so they're thinking that's who you are all the time. Totally not true. Or another one is they can ignore you or ignore your requests, or they forget to get back to you on things that are important. You text them, you call them, you leave a message. And this can happen with parents who are trying to get a hold of kids. And this can also happen with kids who are trying to get a hold of parents.
Oh my God, I'm smiling through half of these because I can so relate. The worry one in particular was a big bugaboo for me. My mother one time said to me, I was up all night worrying about you. And so,
Right?
and what happened was I realized like I was feeling really icky about that because it sort of made me now feel responsible for her being up all night. So how was that helping me feel better about me? So that's
like you're supposed to do something with that. And it's not,
yeah.
yeah.
It's like dumping it back on the other person. It's not really helpful at all. Worry is it's such a useless emotion. Yes. So what else do family members do? They undervalue you. Like they don't think you're enough. And we take that on, boy, it takes a lifetime to work that one out. They give to get. There's a lot of giving in families that just feels transactional. Like, I gave you all this, and what are you doing for me? You know, I gave you everything. What are you doing for me?
What have you done for me lately?
Exactly. Or they complain and vent all the time.
Oh, this is huge.
Right? They dump their problems out. They're constantly saying, oh, I'm such a, this person did this person did that. I'm so frustrated and stressed out. But they don't want to make any changes, and they don't want to hear what you have to say about it. All the other things family do, they treat you poorly because they know you're safe and that you're going to stick around no matter what. Kids do this all the time. They'll just be very disrespectful. And I had a child who used to come home from school, and she didn't really speak her truth at school, so she'd come home and speak it all at us. And it was hard to take. And I was trying to encourage her to be more truthful during her day so that she wouldn't come home with all this stuff to unload. Or they make really rude comments, things they would never say to a friend, like, you know, that skirt looks really bad on you. My kids used to do that all the time. You're going to leave the house in that? Mom, what? You know, you're not going to buy that, are you? Or they use underhanded compliments like,
oh boy,
yeah, like, at least today you made an effort. Yeah, all those little underhanded things. Those are tricky. They also sometimes violate physical or sexual boundaries by comments they make or inappropriate touch. And we're talking about, it doesn't have to be just your family of origin. It could be extended family members, that uncle who hugs you too tight, or who...
the creepy uncle.
I had a creepy uncle. He used to put me on his lap. Oof.
Ugh.
And, you know, often also you want them to have a better life. Like, you can see those complainers who are like, I'm exhausted, I'm so tired. And you're going like, I have the answer for you. But they don't want to hear it. They kind of are addicted to being a victim, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And you want to change it. You want to make it different for them, but they don't really care.
They don't care, or they're not ready to hear it yet. Sometimes they get to a point where they are. Or maybe they try to rescue you, especially when you're not drowning. They try to fix things that aren't broken. That's a real one for me. That gets my goat.
And these are all of the different ways that family members can cross our boundaries. Now, what if you are the toxic one in a relationship? What? Who? Me? How do you know that someone else might consider you toxic? Well, they start to draw boundaries around your behavior, around the things that you say, around their interactions. And yes, it does happen. You can be the toxic one. And sometimes if you are the toxic one, you might feel, and not necessarily if you're toxic, but just crossing someone else's boundaries, you might feel needy. You might feel like you want more than they're willing to give. And you might kind of feel whiny. Why do you never call me back? Why do I have to reach out to you all the time? And it's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault. It is just the way that you are energetically might not work for them. So we'll change it into effective and ineffective behaviors. You know, and sometimes they might leave you out or ignore you, or you might just feel left out. And you don't have to mean it. So that's the other point about toxic family members. And even if we're the toxic ones, we don't mean it. It's not our intention to be that way, but it just might be what happens. And that's okay. But that's why we have boundaries.
Oh, yeah. I have an example from my own life when I was a parent of young children, and I was still learning how to be a good parent. And I was really trying not to yell because I grew up with yellers. And so I still had a little snarkiness in my voice because I didn't really know how to process. And my kids called me on it. They would say, Mom, your tone is really not nice. And I'd be like, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me my tone. You know, I'm like trying to discipline them and they're telling me I'm wrong. So I had a really hard time with that for a long time. But then the turning point for me came when I started to listen to my kids, because they were really smart. They were like the doormen of the building. You know, they were watching everything, they saw everything, and they had really good feedback. And once I was able to receive it, I became a better parent and I had a better relationship with my kids.
We don't cover this in this video, but boundaries are actually a way of bringing people closer. because when you can trust people and you draw boundaries, like Sandy just mentioned with her kids, it changed the relationship because she did listen to them. She listened to their boundaries. So really excited about this week's cheat sheet. Love it. It's called Breaking the Toxic Family Cycle: What to Do When Your Family Drives You Crazy. These boundaries go much deeper than you'll see anywhere else. We really go in depth in a lot of different and unique boundaries. So please make sure that you download the sheet. First one is self-care boundaries. When you are going to see your family, when you are planning an event, or you're going to be seeing them or hanging out with them for an extended period of time. My family around holidays, we've been known to spend 8 hours together in a room. So you want to make sure that you get grounded and you get centered. Make sure that you've had enough rest. If you need to take a nap, take a nap. Make sure that you've eaten. Make sure that you're not hangry, so that you're not like, I haven't eaten, I haven't slept, I'm tired, I'm thirsty. Make sure that you can take care of yourself. Do your self-care boundaries. Meditate if that's something that you do as well. Otherwise, if you're not taking care of yourself, you'll get triggered much easier. You don't want that. The next boundary is a topic boundary. So topic boundary are things that you are willing to discuss or that are okay in the realm of things that will work to talk about, and then things that aren't workable because you don't have an agreement. And it's not to agree with everyone. The difference is when a topic gets too close to you and it feels really bad or toxic, you want to tell people it's not okay. I've noticed that talking about this doesn't work very well for me. Can we do something different? When I wrote my first book, my mother, who I adore and love, and she has been an amazing person in my life, she was very worried. Wrote my first book, and all the conversations I had with her would focus around worry. Where are you going to sell it? Who's going to buy it? How are you going to market it? What's going to happen? What's your plan? And I had to stay in a very positive frame of mind. The book is all about harnessing your inner power. It's called In Power. And I couldn't go into those places like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to sell it? I couldn't do that and keep my mind positive writing the book. So I had a really difficult conversation with my mom, and I said, Mom, I love you and adore you, but when we talk about worrisome things, it starts to feed into my own thinking, and I cannot do that. I have to remain positive for the course of writing this book. And so I'm going to limit our conversations. My mom handled it, and then love her, because a few months later after that situation, she said, I was really hurt when you said that. And it gave me an opportunity to say, Mom, I totally understand. I love you. And when you go down that path of worry and fear and scarcity, it does something to me. And I don't want our relationship to be all about that. So we've actually, since that point, been able to shift. And I'll tell you what, when I talk to my mom now, she tries really hard not to go into that worry, fear place. The next boundary is an energy boundary. So let's say someone else's energy is very affecting in their environment. And the best example I will give you is my father. My father has been one of the angriest people I've ever known. And if he's not angry, he's grumpy. So when he would show up to family events, the energy or the way that the family event would work would kind of be based on how grumpy he was. And if he was, he wouldn't yell exactly, but if he was talking disrespectfully to my mom or talking disrespectfully or negatively to us. So one day I said to my father, look, I appreciate that we get to spend some time together on this holiday, but here's the deal. It's going to be a lot shorter if you can't stay positive. If you go into a negative place, this visit isn't going to last very long. And 3.5 years ago, I had a brain injury, and I was unable to take on yelling energy or negative energy or judging energy. It just really, it was too much. My filters were off. And I had to tell my dad, I need you to talk like I'm a kindergartner. I need you to use a different voice. I need you to do this differently. Otherwise, it hurts, and I'm going to go home. And the best thing that I noticed was it worked. My father actually shifted his energy, which made me realize that he could.
So time boundaries is another one. And this was a big one for me. It's about limiting the amount of time you spend with a family member who is toxic to you. And you can limit the amount of time you spend on the phone. You can start off a phone conversation. Just say, I have 5-10 minutes. I'm calling to see how you're doing. And then when you're done, say, I've got to go now. I love you, or whatever you want to say. Because I have family members who get upset if I end a phone call before they're ready. So you do set that boundary about leaving the conversation and when you're willing to talk again. When my father was alive, I had a very narrow window of time that I could spend with him before I would start to get upset. So I would always say to him, I have a half hour, I'm coming over, I'm going to bring you lunch, whatever it was. And I'd feel good about it. Another thing I do with boundaries, I did with him, was I would spend time with my father around medical issues, because then I would get into like problem solving mode and be there for, make sure the doctors were doing the right thing in the hospital. That was something I could show up for much more than listening to him complain or do the emotional piece. So that I knew my role. So that's a kind of time and space that I spent with my father. Another one is a distance boundary. So if your parents, your family member, anybody drives you crazy, don't stay with them when you go over there. Like if they live a distance away, stay nearby, stay at a hotel, stay with a friend. Or when a family member is toxic to you and wants to stay with you, you can put them up at a friend or a hotel. So make sure you take care of yourself there. And a space boundary. So space boundaries are, think about the space that you want to see your family member in. And what I love to do is either do it in a public place. So if you get together with family, we would often do restaurant visits instead of having a family in a home. That creates a safer environment because people aren't going to scream and yell usually in a restaurant. Or you can use a buffer of having other people join you at the table. Like say they do come to your home, but you have friends join you, so that again, they'll be on their best behavior. They're not going to revert back to toxic behavior when there are other people around.
It's interesting, right? How families can get away with some of the things they say to us.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want you to remember is that boundaries are all about respect. And that includes the respect that you have for yourself. As Sandy just said, taking care of yourself. Show yourself you respect yourself by setting those boundaries. And whether you're setting the boundaries or your family members are setting a boundary with you, respect it. Respect yourself and respect them.
RESPCT.
Find out what it means to me.
So thank you for watching, unless you want to hear us sing the whole song. And please remember to download our free cheat sheet, Breaking the Toxic Family Cycle. It's a good one this week. It's a good one every week. And we're so good. So share this video with your friends and on social media. And remember that boundaries aren't bitchy, they are beautiful.